My name is Michael Goldberg, and I am our executive director of our Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship at Case Western Reserve. I also am an associate professor in our business school. And it is a thrill to welcome my very good friend, Courtney Kingston. I was just, we were college classmates. We met, we were just discussing before, even before class started, we did a hiking trip. This, I guess it would have been, so Courtney, the summer of 1988. Wow. And we've been friends for a long time. And I also have a special place in the Kingston family in that I introduced Courtney to her husband, Andy, who was my colleague at the National Democratic Institute. So I get a lot of free meals from the Kingston Floms. And actually, this is my first, Andy participated actually in our speaker series in the spring. So this is my first husband-wife duo, different speaker series, to have a husband and wife participating, and hopefully not the last. So Courtney, it's awesome to have you here. We have all of our sessions are moderated by students, and we couldn't ask for a better student than Jack Petito, who has a connection to Courtney through his parents, and actually Jack's grandparents are joining us today as well, the Pavies, and we're thrilled to have them here as well. So, and Jack's been a great student on campus, done a lot of work in the entrepreneurship space, been working this summer, getting his feet wet in venture capital. So we're really proud of what Jack has been doing during his time at Case, and he's joining us via Chicago, and I know we'll be remote this semester. We're all sad in Cleveland. We won't be with him in person, but Jack, thank you for doing this today. I will stop talking and turn it over to you. For those who are new to our sessions, Jack's going to moderate and sort of lead Courtney through a couple questions, and then we want to hear from you. So just let Jack know either through Zoom in the chat that you have a question, or if you're on LinkedIn Live, just put a comment in there and we'll make sure that Jack knows about it, and we will go from there. So over to you, Jack.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun. So we're here with Courtney, who founded Kingston Vineyards, one of Chile's finest wineries. Well, Courtney, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sounds like I paid you to say that, Jeff. That's a great intro. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. This is really a treat, something I've been looking forward to this whole summer. And I'm looking forward to having this be primarily a conversation, a dialogue, where hopefully we can talk about entrepreneurship, we can talk about globally launching a brand, we can talk about navigating agrarian reform, expropriation, COVID, social unrest, and wine, all in the same breath. So really looking forward to whatever way our conversation goes today. So I thought I'd start with just a quick 5-minute overview, and then we will go to questions right away. So I'm Courtney Kingston. I'm a fourth generation, our kids are actually fifth generation farming in Casablanca, Chile. I look like this with the last name Kingston because my great-grandfather and great-grandmother, who were the first Kingstons of Chile, were from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and Brooklyn, respectively. They actually met in their 20s. There is often a unique window when you're in your late 20s, when maybe you had your first job working for a larger organization and you're like, I can do that. Not only can I do that, I can lead that, and I can do that by myself. And that's exactly what they both were thinking. And so they headed to Chile. This is in 1906, before the Model T, before the Panama Canal. They actually met down there at 14,000 feet in the hills of Peru. My great-grandfather was a mining engineer at the time, and my great-grandmother was an administrative assistant, which was quite common as one of the few opportunities for working women in the early 1900s. So the rest is history. My dad, my grandfather, my great-aunts were all born and raised in Chile. So I've got this background on for you today, which is up in the hills of our Pinot Noir on our farm, overlooking our dairy and our beef cattle operation as well, just to set the stage. But I'm actually not in Chile. As you may imagine, I am not able to travel. And in fact, I'll transport you to where I am right now, which is Northern California. So I am here. I was actually about to board a flight for our 20th harvest, our 20th vintage, when flights were grounded. And in fact, our first thing that we had to do, we closed our tasting room in Chile. I'll back up for a second. We farm organically farmed grapes that we then make into small lot Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Syrah, all by hand, as well as host guests on our family's farm about an hour outside of Santiago. Chile has become a wonderful, thankfully, adventure destination. It's a bit of the 7 wonders of the world all in one country. It's long and skinny, about as wide as the US is top to bottom, with incredible geographic diversity. So typically our guests are headed to the glaciers in Patagonia, to the incredible flowering in the spring up in the Atacama Desert near the Altiplano, or even going to see an eclipse in our Lake District before skiing down a volcano. And we are right on the way, since all flights come in and out of the capital. So here I am in a cabin in Northern California, and actually in Chile, we are in spring. So this is what it is about to look like in Chile. Right now we're in the nail biter time, which is bud break when frosts hit us. But let me give you a little sense of some older pictures. This is my father and my grandmother. When my father was growing up on our farm, you were given a cow for responsibility and a horse for transport. And you can see these were uncertain times for my dad, and he's really not quite sure about that agreement as he gets saddled with a cow. And here is from our family home on our farm in Chile that still exists. This is actually 3 generations. Those are my great-grandparents in the chair. I think we still all do that, where you defer to your elders and they get the chair and the rest of you stand around. That's my father, who's about to celebrate his 80th birthday in the striped shirt. Our team is Chilean American. This is our team calendar, where we have everybody's birthdays and the like. This is our winemaker, Amael Orrego, on the far left, along with some members of our culinary team. We actually have extended into food as well as wine when our guests come for us for food and wine experiences. This is Manu, who is our cellar master in our winery. And here's a sense of the next generation. This is our daughter, Luisa, on the far left. She is that your left? Well, hopefully I got it right. If I didn't, I just said right. That's Luisa on the left, along with my cousin Rebecca's little girl, Rebequita and Juanita. So we are a fully mezclado family. And I love speaking to students because the reason why we did what we did was I was in business school. I was trying to, while I went to college with Michael, I'll bring you back to transport you back to Chile. I went to Stanford for business school, particularly because of its focus on entrepreneurship and general management. And at the side, at the time, on my sort of free time on the side, moonlighting, my brother and I were trying to help out, bounce some ideas off of our uncle, Enrique Allende, who's the puro Chileno. He manages our vineyard. And I sound a little bit like that NPR lady that when she says Magdalena del Barco, like she switches into her Spanish. It's really hard for me to be like Los Angeles. So I'm sorry, I hope it doesn't sound too pretentious, but when I switch gears, I switch back to the Chilean accent. We were trying to think what was next for our family's farm. We had been in dairy and beef cattle for 3 generations. As many of you may know, and in fact, I just had the pleasure of driving across the country and back and had the special pleasure of staying in downtown Cleveland at the Drury Hotel. We brought our dog, and they accepted dogs. When you search on TripAdvisor and then you say pet friendly, you suddenly get about 3 selections. But we had a fantastic time. I was really impressed by the arts in downtown Cleveland and just the beautiful view. Unfortunately, the Rock and Roll Museum was, of course, closed, as I know many things are right now. We continued from Cleveland up towards Madison, having gone through the Upper Peninsula on our way out. And I was struck by the dairy farms there. And as you know, what has been happening largely in dairy in the US is consolidation. Dairies need to get larger. Scale is really the way to make it work. We were trying to figure out what we could do next for our family farm, having been in dairy and beef cattle for 3 generations, and we really had sort of ridden the wave of commodity pricing. And we are still in those businesses, so that you know, but the vineyard became a way of diversifying our risk and hopefully testing the grounds into new things. So this was when I was in business school. It was my second year. We were able to do an independent project, and that's when I wrote the business plan to plant our vineyard. And here we are 20 years later with lots of ups and downs. What I hope we'll do in this conversation, and then I'll pass it back to Jack, is I take particular pleasure and enjoyment in talking to students for a couple reasons. One, pay it forward. I learned a lot from the protagonists and the speakers that came to talk to our class, and I gave thanks for their authenticity and their candor. You can read as many articles as you want, but in fact, when people speak in person and when they're able to speak authentically, I think it can make a difference. And you'll find that, in fact, while you might read a bio and it just seems like, wow, that person just knew it all from the start, we did not. And in fact, we still don't. I still remember driving with my dad to Santiago. We were meeting with a group of executive MBAs from Duke to speak with them. And they sent us the questions ahead of time. And I was reading the questions to my dad. And he said, sounds like they think we've arrived, like we figured it all out. And I said, yeah, we'll definitely have to convince them that that's not indeed the case. So I look forward to talking about our failures as well as our wins with you all today. And there's so much more to say, but I went over my 5 minutes that I told Jack that I would use as an opener. Thank you for coming.
Well, thanks, Courtney. Well, first off, I'd just love to hear what got you into wine in the first place. What made you think, we should start a vineyard on this farm? What inspired?
So a couple things. The big company that I worked for right after college was Deloitte. I worked for them in their management consulting arm. They had a big tax business at the time for Northern California wineries, but very limited consulting. And so I was basically the business analyst that got put on this business development project that was looking at the Northern California wine industry and actually helping them with their financials. It was a benchmarking study. Largely at the time, this has changed, but not wholly. The wine industry is largely privately held. So it was very rare for leaders to have benchmarking about what kind of return on assets they should have, what kind of profitability, what kind of inventory turns, all of these kind of things. So I got exposed to the business very early on. That was when I learned that you only made a small fortune in wine by starting with a large one, and vowed that that was definitely not what we were going to do. Growing up in our family, there were 3 mottos about our farm that were just sort of gently or not so gently imbued to the next generation. One was, ask not what you can do for the farm, but ask not what the farm can do for you. Sorry, JFK, but what you can do for the farm. 2, don't quit your day job. Never depend on the farm. And 3, never bet the farm. So I learned in that, never bet the farm. But in these studies, there were some independent vineyards that were doing a good job. And they were cash flow positive. And in fact, they were doing quite well, especially those that were at the quality end of at the higher margin end, smaller end of the spectrum. At the same time, Chile was planting vines. We've actually been planting vines in Chile since the Spaniards showed up in the 15th century. But our valley, Casablanca, which is closer to the coast, was really relatively newly planted. First vines in the 80s. And so this was early 90s. And they were more widely planted, but they were mostly farmers like us extending into vineyards by planting in the flats, right where they had let their cows graze, with rows wide enough so their regular tractors could go through. They were not looking at the hills, and they were not approaching it as a as at the higher margin quality end of the business. They were focused on what we know. And Chile still is 50% export oriented, driven largely by commodities. So they were entering on the commodity side. So a couple ideas started going around in our head with my brother and I, speaking with my uncle, thinking, what if we planted in the hills where the cows don't want to go? What if we started having conversations, started showing up honestly at coffee shops where Pinot Noir winemakers and vineyard managers showed up? I started to go into conversations just like this one that Andrea and Ron and Chris and Todd are all joining us at. And I was a sponge learning about the industry. And then what I started to try to do was take some of the knowledge that was existing in the US, which was probably maybe 20 years ahead of Chile in planting cool climate reds, bring that to Chile and localize it, not impose California winemaking and farming in Chile, but localize it.
Well, that sounds like a great journey. So tell me, you talked a lot about your time at how you went to Stanford and how you worked in Deloitte Consulting in the wine industry. How much of that today are you still using? How much does that experience help you?
Well, one of the things that, let's see, I'll pick one from each of them. So from Deloitte, I learned the importance of talking to your neighbors and working collaboratively. So the importance of understanding how you fit within your industry and within your peers, and how you rank and how you can get better. That's actually quite different. Chile, we tend to be fiercely independent, whether it's the result of years of military rule, whether it's just our culture, very, very close to family. And yet the trust factor outside of family is quite low. The Economist does all these fun little indexes. Remember they used to do the, Goldie, remember they did that Big Mac index, price of a Big Mac around the world. I think they've also done one on confidence in terms of interpersonal confidence. And I forget how they ingeniously measured it, but Chile was at an all-time low. Again, this is on professional interactions. So that was very important for me to learn for consulting, because consultants are always benchmarking you, cross-referencing from other industries into your industry. And wine can be pretty provincial and pretty closed. And so I learned the importance of the fluidity of those conversations. After business school, we made the investment decision, actually my second year in business school. And then there was nothing for me to do as a MBA with my background, and I had big loans to pay off. So I went into tech. And I did that actually for 4 years, working for a company called CNET, and then their arm that they formed when they did a merger with NBC, which today is NBC Universal. In there, I learned how to project manage because it was a technology company and I worked on the product side of the business. So I worked with engineers, graphic designer, UI people. And so I learned how to project manage a diverse set of specialists that were all weighing in and giving their information and their recommendations while I was slowly moving the ball forward. I also lived in a totally different environment, as you can imagine. In tech, you put stuff up, you tear it down. You put stuff up, you tear it down. And in fact, my husband, Andy, who works at, let's see, can you do it? It works at Slack. It's my water bottle. Actually has been training me to say tech instead of high tech, which I have to confess, Jack, I was saying until about last month. So, so I would say those are the two key things that I learned.
Well, that's fun. Yeah. So in that working in the tech industry with the project management, how has that influenced the way you run your vineyard? Has it influenced it, or are you trying to go more of the traditional route?
I would say it is very much influenced it in terms of the way that we do business. So we run our business, not just since COVID, 100% virtually. So my husband, Andy, and I lived in Chile in the about 5 years ago for a year, put our daughters in school locally with my Chilean cousins, kids in Santiago. They were the all-girls Catholic school. Quite a shocker for them to adjust, sink or swim, and thankfully they did. But otherwise, I am based here because of Andy's job, and his job is here in the San Francisco Bay Area. But we have been on Zoom long before it became trendy due to COVID. We have always embraced the idea of dispersed teams. That's very normal to us. And we've also always embraced the idea of specialists. So we do not tell our winemakers how to make wine. We do not tell our graphic designers how to graphically design. We say, this is what we're looking for. These are the results that we want. And this is why. Particularly, I will say that, for instance, in graphic design. But they come up with the actual product, right, based on that framework. Same with the winemaking. I don't claim to know. I mean, I can talk to you about VSP and cane brune versus cordon pruned in the vineyard, and I know enough to be dangerous in viticulture, but I'm not the specialist. So I think that's really important, whereas I think a lot of people get into wine with rose-colored glasses. They've always loved to drink wine, and so they think they can make wine. And I think there's been a level of humility that we have been able to bring to the business, having been slapped around many, many times in agribusiness, as well as in my own career in tech.
So do you feel that working virtually across continents has helped you be better prepared for the whole COVID pandemic?
Ironically, yes, although we're still missing, in fact, we're missing more those in-person meetings. They really matter. I mean, I would normally be in Chile 3 times now. And Chile is always changing incredibly quickly. And so it sort of leapfrogs us often. And unless you're there and feeling it, it might actually be because I'm also more of a tactile person. Right now I'm struggling, I'm looking for my mask. I'm struggling with masks because I can only read people's eyes. I can't read their faces. I have found that I can do lots over Zoom, but you don't have those in-between moments. We call them, for instance, in our family, when we're fortunate to get together, we all pile into this one cabin with 18 of us and 2 dogs. And it's a little close for comfort, I can tell you. But there are those in-between times that we call them pajama times, to be honest with you. I'm mixing personal and professional. When things come out, when things come up. And so while technology has, this COVID time, we've been incredibly well prepared for it, you can't replace those trips of connecting with others when you can in person. So I go to Chile typically about every other month. And so I'm down 3 trips now.
Well, that's a shame, but I guess COVID's affecting all of us.
It is, yeah, it's where we are. It's what we've been dealt.
That it is. What would the unique challenges be of running a business across a continent? Because, I mean, as of right now, obviously, we're not traveling. We're all stuck in the same place and stuck on Zoom. But how do you usually deal with the semi-monthly trips to Chile and having to communicate across all of North and South America?
I'll give you a very tangible one. We do exit interviews with all of our team members. It's actually very consulting-like. We do project debriefs. We do, whenever we can, 360s. We do consistent our summer interns. We do mid-reviews, end-of-the-year reviews, and exit interviews. Exit interviews are a time for them to say, here's what worked, here's what didn't work. We have a fellowship program where students come join us for a year in Chile and work for us, leading our hospitality program along with our Chilean team. Anyway, in a recent exit interview, one of our top stars who was rolling off said, I really wish that when you are in Chile, that you could just be present. I really wish you could just watch and listen. I'm pausing to let that sink in for you. My default when I go to Chile, just so you know, back when the kids were taking the school bus, I would take them to the bus on Monday. I would head to San Francisco Airport, fly overnight, land on Tuesday. I'm in Chile Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, take the red eye home, land on Friday, and the kids would arrive at the bus on Friday afternoon. And by the way, all sorts of dogs would eat homework and all sorts of challenge would happen in between, not just because of me, because of Murphy's Law. But I packed in as much as I possibly could into that time on the ground. And so I would prioritize one-on-ones. My sister-in-law, Jen, who's our COO, and I would have back-to-back meeting, one-on-one, trying to get that personal pulse, that personal conversation, Jack, that I was referring to, that sometimes doesn't come up on a call that is focused on a certain topic. And to have someone say, I just wish you could stay and listen and watch, was powerful, right? I mean, she basically said, you would understand my job more and the challenges and the victories that I have if you were a fly on the wall. And instead, what I was prioritizing was these one-on-one meetings, team-wide meetings, and seeing customers. Like, it's very hard to walk into our tasting room, right? Mostly because of my personality, but also because of the reality, and not go and introduce myself to each one of our groups. Typically, our guests are, in addition to larger MBA groups, we also often will host guests that are coming on their 30th birthday for a trip, or their anniversary. So typically, we call them their 2s and 4s and 6s. So to sit and listen and to watch, I thought was really powerful for her to suggest that. And she's right. And it's a real limitation that we have right now. I will be moving more of those conversations, the in-person conversations about how are you doing? What's going on? How are things with your family? How are, just understanding more of the whole person. We're moving those to Zoom now, whereas before we thought we had to wait. We needed the pajama time. We still value the pajama time for that unintended stuff that comes up that's really real. But we have to figure out how to do more. How can I be present in the room without changing the room? And you get that when you show up a lot. And I show up as much as I can right now. But I also have a husband who's an entrepreneur and a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, and 14-year-old. So we're in a season right now that makes that hard.
Yeah, I definitely understand. And the sitting and listening and watching advice, that's one we could all take to heart, especially us undergrads who spend so much time just spouting our own opinions and thinking before we talk. So what I was wondering, what is the largest challenge you faced about trying to differentiate your winery from the rest of Chile? Because as you said, a lot of it's commodity grape selling and winemaking. What has been the hardest part of differentiating yourself and marketing yourself as the high-end winery you are?
I think we've done a good job at that, actually, differentiating ourselves and setting ourselves apart, Jack. Where we've gotten it wrong is timing. So we have been so ahead of the market that there was no market. That's a problem, right? Like, yeah, you can be some soothsayer, but if there's nobody cares about what you've made, that's a problem, right? Typically, there's a market. People often will see a void in the market, a space in the market, and realize like there is a need here. But unless that need is right now, you're stuck. I mean, I'll remember another classmate of mine from Stanford who went to the Cordon Bleu before business school as a chef. He works for Buy-Right, which is a leading top grocer in San Francisco. And it's what you'd think. They sell like, $8 a cup carrot juice and other incredibly fine. I mean, to go into Buy-Right without a budget is amazing. It makes Whole Foods' whole paycheck look like nothing. But he talks about when he tried to do high-end carrot juice, for $3.99 in 1993 in San Francisco. Didn't work. He was wrong. He was ahead of the time. And we ran into that. So we ran into that multiple times. We ran into it first with our vineyard. So our very first harvest was in 2001. We were ready. We were ready to go. This was our third leaf when you have just a little bit of product, a little bit of grapes to sell. I'd done all these best practices on grape contracts from around the world, from Burgundy, from California. I was going to tie the ton price to the bottle price of the wine, which Andy Beckstoffer did up in Napa. I was convinced I was going to be the Andy Beckstoffer of Chile. Nobody cared. I got fired from the grape sales job within about a month. My uncle took it over because no one cared. And not only that, my best practices and my contracts and practically glowing behind my ears with my newly minted MBA meant that nobody wanted to talk to me. Nobody cared about my Pinot Noir. Whereas my uncle, who's puro Chileno, could manage rural Chile, could interact with them. And the issue was more that nobody wanted our product at that point. That's when I turned to what I would call the flying winemakers from Burgundy and California to help seed our business by making a small amount of wine and showing the quality. That's how we ultimately got into the wine business ourselves.
Seems to me
there are
like
other times too. There are other times. Sorry, Jack, to interrupt. There are many other times throughout our evolution when we've made similar mistakes. Go ahead.
I was just saying, it seems like a lesson in making a market for yourself when there isn't one, finding a way to get your product out and have experts judge it based off its quality rather than its perception.
Well, and we were stuck, right? Because you can't make exceptional wine out of bad grapes. You just can't. But you can make bad wine out of exceptional grapes. And there was no knowledge around Pinot Noir. Cool climate reds were very new. Again, we'd been making wine in Chile since the 15th century, but all in warmer sites, in warmer valleys. So coastal reds was really new. And Pinot Noir is nicknamed the heartbreak grape. It's very challenging to grow as well as to vinify, to make wine make. And so it was just a stumper. So I had to appeal to almost the psychological angle of these winemakers to get them interested. And ultimately, that's why we made a small amount of our own wine, was to be able to show in a bottle, in a finished product, this is the quality of what we're selling, so that it would then drive the price of our grapes.
All right. Well, thanks for answering the question. Well, I'd like to open it up to the audience. If there's any questions anybody has, feel free to ask. You can type it in the Q&A section or in the chat.
I'll jump in just to get things rolling, if that's okay. First of all, Courtney, I'm going to do photo show and tell. At least 3 people.
Yeah, that's Evan Garfine, that's Nelson Mandela, and that's Lieberman, excuse me, and that's you.
That was the policy conference I went to South Africa that you didn't go.
Oh my! I think I was doing NAFTA.
I know you were doing NAFTA
with Pat Supponce.
Mandela, and it's his birthday today, by the way. Big 5-0.
Pat Supponce and Ted Cruz.
There we go. Courtney and I have all the memories. We'll give you
many memories.
The second follow-up will be Ted Cruz stories from our
we'll spare you those.
Now that it's the political season.
Not political. No politics.
We won't go into politics. Let me ask you about, so you guys are the subject of a Stanford Business School case study. And it's been interesting. Oh, 2, right. And you, and I brought my MBA students actually to the fields that you're in your background, which was awesome.
That was great.
I'm curious, for those of us that are sort of teaching, case study courses and using the case study on Kingston Vineyards, which was great. I'm sort of curious, and you've been through the student process, do you ever get insights from the students that you have found to be useful as you evolve your business? Because once you get kind of some high octane MBA students, I'm sort of curious, how that engagement goes, and if there's and what the value is besides that they're buying wine from your vineyard might be in that engagement.
Yeah, no, it's terrific. So we are, our business is relatively small. I mean, if you don't count our ag team in the vineyard, and in the dairy and the beef cattle and the rest part of the farm that my uncle manages, we are 20 people right now. In fact, we're down to even smaller. We're closer. If you don't count a lot of volunteer family members, we're really small. So one of the things that I particularly love about our education program and our conversations with the MBAs is the freshness, is the creativity of the questions. And they often are things that we haven't considered. And they're not always just like, hey, I didn't consider that. It's actually sometimes even more subtle. It'll move a rock in my brain that I hadn't, make me look at something slightly different just in the way the question was phrased. So it's really powerful. And that's how we got into it. I mean, it's thanks to education. My father came to Princeton basically from Chile. It's thanks to my great-grandfather's education that he was able to come to Chile as a mining engineer, thanks to the Michigan School of Mines, which today is Michigan Tech. Go Huskies. So we got into it because it was fun. It gave me an excuse to go back to campus and talk to Stanford students. I'd be delighted to go back to Princeton if they invited me. But it then evolved, then the case was written, and now we've had this opportunity. We've got students from schools all over the country and internationally learning about entrepreneurship through the lens of our experience in the Chilean and international market. And so that's spectacular, because when you run a family business and when you run a small business, we really are proud of ourselves how, with the exception of our fellowship program, which is intended to be a program where people roll in and roll out, we love how long our employees stay with us. When that happens, when you combine that with a small team, you lose freshness. That is one of the best things of having a larger company or a larger team. When someone gets assigned to your project, you have a whole new team, is the freshness and creativity. And we're delighted to have that with students like you guys today. So bring on the questions. I count on them.
Great.
So Courtney, this is Bob.
Hi, Bob.
So when you were a young hotshot MBA, going back to the family and saying, this dairy business is a nice business, but I think we ought to do something different. I can imagine some of the pushback you might have received from the family. And then, of course, it didn't go beautifully at the beginning. Talk a little bit about the family dynamics and how you made that all work. Today, is the wine business on a scale similar to dairy, or is it still significantly smaller?
So great question. And I hope I get to the, make sure I come back to the add-on question at the end about the dairy. So this was back, I'm remembering back to 1994, 1995. First of all, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. And so there has always been a spirit of bringing up ideas. And that was always welcomed. And my uncle Enrique is first and foremost an entrepreneur and was always looking at ideas for us. In fact, recently brought a solar energy project that we're probably going to approve and go forward on. So the bringing the ideas was not new. The approving the ideas that took significant upfront capital to plant was very new. So a couple things were key to that. One was we got validation by negotiating quite extensively, actually, with a California winery back in the mid-90s. So before we made the investment decision to plant ourselves and put our own money down, we actually negotiated extensively with a California winery that was interested in expanding in Chile. And that was happening a lot in the early 90s. A lot of the Mondavis and the Beringers and the Seagrams and the Kendall Jacksons were looking for more affordable inputs to run through their supply chain. That gave us a lot of knowledge, right? Otherwise, you're going from the dairy business to wine. I mean, that is a pretty crazy leap. That helped. We promised we would never go into wine. We were only growing. So that here we are in the hospitality business, in the wine business. But the original plan was to take advantage of a land-based business. We also took the size of the business that had been the business plan with this negotiation with this third party, where they were going to take the capital risk and they were going to bring the know-how that we didn't have. We were going to contribute the knowledge of operating in Chile, which is not a small contribution, and the land. When that broke down, Tim and I took that project and that business plan and went and shrunk it to about 10%. And that is the idea that we took to the family. So a couple things. My Uncle Peter said, please, not another cheddar cheese project, which had been my grandfather's idea in the 1950s, which I can tell you didn't work. Chileans hate cheddar cheese. They're just starting to like it a little bit, but in general, like much more mantecoso, much milder cheeses. Another family member said, not in that frost-bitten dust bowl, which was their memory growing up on the farm. Couldn't imagine growing grapevines. So there was pushback. And then the question was, who wanted to double down? Who wanted to invest? Who wanted to not only respond to the occasional capital call that we would get for the farm when the price of milk took a dive, but actually wanted to put money into a long-term project. I mean, the cash flows were very honest and very long-term in the business model. And pretty much everybody went like this. I don't know if anybody plays this game anymore. This means not it, as in I'm not in. But my brother Tim and I, and originally my brother David and my brother Sam, were all single. And we were in our late 20s, and we had, remember those corporate jobs I talked about? We had some money saved and not a lot of time. And so we decided to do the seed funding. Just yesterday, to wrap that up, Bob, I gave a presentation to some of our Gen 5 family members, where I was presenting basically a Google drawing of the companies that we have in Chile and how they interact. And I think it was Julia who was like, she just sat there because they're a bunch of little companies. And the reason for that is what we did was, when we created a new business to protect the other family members from risk and to simplify, the ownership and clarify it, that was the new owners. Whoever said I'm in, those were the new owners. We had the same conversation when we decided to invest and build a winery. And similarly, when we built our tasting room. So with that has brought some complication. Your question about the dairy business and its size, actually today on a revenue basis, and you can see it, I think, in the B case, the dairy business on a pure revenue basis, Bob, is about as big as the vineyard business. We produce about 60,000 liters of milk a day for the Santiago market. Very challenging because we're only an hour from Santiago. And so there are pressures to not do that so close to the capital as the capital grows. But today we are still we've got about 1,500 milking cows. And my uncle, that is really in his blood. It's his passion, it's love. And he, to his credit, he has figured out how to survive in an otherwise very difficult situation. And the price of milk right now is up.
All right, thanks, Courtney. I have a question from Jamila. If you'd like to read it.
Hello, and I'd like to say I'm tuning in from Michigan, so I love all of the Michigan love.
That's awesome.
Yes. I was curious what some of the downsides were of operating with a family business. If there are some that you feel like are inherent to family businesses in general, because I know that you mentioned how your family really leaned on each other, so there were a lot of upsides as well. But
sure. Yeah. So there are a couple. One is sort of the church and state separation between work and family is gone. And that's hard. You have to be super explicit when you are talking about the business and when you're not. And if we, put a penny in a jar for every time we cross that, broke that rule, somebody, whoever got that jar, would make some money. So, for example, when Andy and I got married, thanks to Michael's introduction, my mom hung a sign on my parents' house. We were married back home in New Jersey that said, "This is a wine-free zone," which was her way of saying, this is a wedding. This is a family celebration. We're not talking about the business here. Another challenge is, and I could talk about the benefits for a long, long time. So I'm just going to be honest with you and talk about the challenges, and we can talk about the benefits another time, which are many.
Yeah.
The other one is, I don't know, Jamil, if you've had the experience where you go home and you might, if you go home to your, family of origin, and you sit at the kitchen counter. My parents still live in the same house that I grew up in. And I sit in the kitchen counter at the seat that I used to sit at, where my older brother used to put his foot on my chair, and it drove me nuts. I said I could feel the weight of the foot on my chair. Those old family dynamics that you really only have with your siblings. The flip is, by the way, that my older brother, who I work with a lot and really, really respect and revere, I've always put on a pedestal. He's always been my big brother. And that can be unhealthy in a work environment, and something that I've really needed to work on. He's as flawed as the rest of us, right? And my voice is as important as the rest of us. But in a family business, you can bring some of your family dynamics that really are unique to a family and overlay them on a business. And that can at times be unhealthy. I hope that candid response is helpful to you.
Yeah, that is great insight. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
All right, so we're near in time, but I've got one more question to ask from our LinkedIn Live viewer. Chile is the fifth largest exporter of wines. Do you think this has helped you in producing wine?
It is. And I mean, I thought our number was bigger than, we're huge. Chile is, it's basically export or die. Yes, insofar as in Chile, we are quick studies. Like, I can tell you that we originally had to import glass in the very beginning to get a quality glass, for instance, quality bottle from France. And within 2 years, Cristalera Toro, which is one of our today bottle providers, had come up with a Burgundy bottle that was of the quality that we wanted. So, or I can tell you that our label company, while Chile is only a population of 18 million people, right? That's the size of New York State. We're very small. When it comes to wine business and the wine industry, Chileans get it. The flip side is it's been hard when you're on the smaller end of the production, which is where we are. We sell 90% of our grapes and hold back 10% to make about 5,000 cases a year. It can be tough to purchase from these larger suppliers that are used to working in volume. So in the very beginning, years ago, we would bond together with other small guys with an great organization called MOVI, which is Movimiento Vinateros Independientes, which is, it's like movie, but without the E, where we collectively purchase, inputs together. That's how we originally joined it. About 6 years ago. We're sadly no longer a member, but it's got a whole new vibrant membership, which is terrific.
All right, well, thank you, Courtney. Since we are nearing the end of our time, I'm going to send this back to Michael, but this has been a lot of fun and a lot of good insights have come from it. So thank you for speaking with us.
And I was just going to say, Courtney, I just went to the refrigerator and got a bottle of CJ's Barrel Syrah 2018. Jack's got a bottle also.
Thank you. Thank you. I should say, and I didn't say this, so today what we do, and this is important for you all to know, is when guests visit us, And even if they don't visit us, if they just want to travel to Chile in a bottle, we then ship our wines to our guests and our followers' homes. So we have built a direct-to-consumer network where we are able to get the wine to you all the way from Casablanca, Chile, to your home in the US, wherever we're legally allowed. Unfortunately, that does not include Utah. But other than that, we would be delighted to send wines to you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Jack, Bob, and Trisha, thank you for your years of being club members and for enjoying Kingston Family Vineyards on your Thanksgiving table. I'll never forget the Thanksgiving when I was fortunate enough to enjoy with you along with Jack's other grandfather in Big Sur. This has really been a treat, Michael. Thank you all.
We're good. Well, Jack, thank you for moderating. It's good. Another feather in your growing cap of accomplishments on campus. So moderating a fun entrepreneurship session is in your wheelhouse. So hopefully you'll do more of these. So thanks for doing that. Courtney, thank you for doing this. I know you've not only hosted us in Chile, which was great. Actually, I found our old blog post about some of the students, which I put in the chat for the students, but you've also spoken in other classes, and you've been a great supporter and friend. And, I love that your engagement with students, like some of the ones we have today, has been, obviously it's meaningful for students, but it's nice to hear that some of the ideas and things that come up are kind of help shape what you're doing. And as somebody that gets to do this every day, I mean, there's nothing better than kind of engaging with students and kind of hearing some of their ideas.
More.
Yeah, so this is a fun way to do it. So thank you for doing this. Look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully soon. And we will look forward to welcoming you on campus, next time you're through Cleveland.
I want to come back. I'm going to come back. I'm look forward to it. It was such a great visit. And I want to make sure that you all have my email address. My personal email address is Courtney@kingstonvineyards.com, Courtney @kingstonvineyards.com. So please reach out to me. I'd be happy to, anything I can respond to, any questions I can answer. And good luck on your entrepreneurial ventures whenever they take form in your life. And best wishes for all of us, as especially those who've been touched personally by COVID-19.